Stefan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Emma, for having me.
My pleasure. Do you have a favorite quote? Something that inspires or motivates you?
I do, which is also pretty related to what we're doing at Cello. So the quote is from Charlie Munger, one of the greatest investors of all time. And it goes, probably many of you have heard it, show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. Fantastic quote. It's true in so many areas of life.
Yeah, that's a great one. So tell us about Cello. What does the product do? Who's it for? And what's the main problem you're helping to solve?
Yeah, so Cello is the first all-in-one referral platform that allows software companies to launch their own referral programs within hours and on autopilot. So basically, everyday users and partners are being monetary incentivized to recommend the products they're using and to get a personal monetary incentive by doing that at a time where customer acquisition costs are rising pretty quickly. And at a time where legacy acquisition channels are reaching the end of the S-curve, Cello provides an alternative to acquire customers virally and cheaper.
Yeah. I think where it really landed for me was when you were telling me earlier that on the one hand, you can have these referral programs where, people get a referral link and they can go and use it and maybe there's some kind of, financial incentive. Or the kind of the B2C space and the Dropbox example where people are getting more storage for referrals. But you get into this really weird space where it's like, no, it's the users of our customers that we want to incentivize. But how do you do that? They're not paying for the product. It's like, where did this even... Well, actually, before we get into that, because that's probably a deeper conversation, just help us understand, like, where are you currently in terms of the size of the business, in terms of revenue, customer, size of team?
Sure, yeah. So we're 19 people spread across Europe and Asia. We're at around 2.5 million in AR. We have around 150 customers, close to 7 million what we call monthly enabled users, so monthly active users of our customers that can on a monthly basis engage with our product inside their tools. We have and are very proud of customers like Miro and Typeform, Veed, Playo, so the best SaaS tools out there, and we help them to grow via referrals.
Awesome. So the business was founded in 2022. Tell me, what were you doing prior to that? And actually, probably the story goes further back because this is something that you experienced firsthand trying to build yourself. But just explain, like, what were you doing before you started this business, and where did the idea come from? What I know a lot of it was from your own personal experience and pains, and exactly what were you seeing?
Yeah, so maybe I go back to the very beginning and then talk a little bit about the inception of Cello. So I started my first company around about 12 years ago in automotive. Very hostile place to start a SaaS company, I can tell you. We sold the company after 5 years to Continental. I stayed a few more years for the post-merger integration and then became Chief Revenue Officer of another SaaS product. Basically what Square does in the US, but like focused on European markets. So I moved out of automotive connected services into the beautiful world of SaaS. And we had many users that were introducing us to new prospects, to referring us new customers. And at some point in time, they always came to us and asked, like, what's in it for me? Like, if I bring you a few more customers, I would also like to get a piece of the cake. Otherwise, I just don't bring you anymore. At the time, we didn't have any infrastructure at Shore in place for that. So, we decided, okay, let's maybe get some infrastructure in place. Let's get a referral program up because it's a beautiful customer acquisition channel. And I sent out my growth team just to do some research and a vendor analysis in order to pick the right vendor for that. They came back and basically said, sorry, there is nothing out there that that we can use for that. All the tools we were able to find are all like affiliate and influencer type referral platforms, but nothing you can integrate into your product. Nothing that that allows us to pay out users personally and not a business. And that was like an aha moment for me. So first of all, I did research myself because I couldn't believe it. Came to the conclusion their research was pretty buttoned up. And then I thought about building it ourselves because it used to be quite an interesting channel for us. But my CFO told me that there is no chance because it's too complex. It would require us on the finance side to invest heavily in order to get this to work. And that was basically, the inception story of Cello. Quickly after that, I played a little bit around with the idea, and then I decided to quit and start this company. Obviously, after more research and talking to more founders and growth operators, but everyone had to or seemed to have the same issue.
So one question that you get asked a lot, I'm going to ask as well. If this was such a great idea, why had nobody built it?
Actually, this was the most asked question, especially during our pre-seed fundraise. And at the time, I didn't really have a good idea. I think with more time, there are a few things that led to no one actually was building that. So first of all, PLG, product-led growth, is a go-to-market strategy that hasn't been around since ever. It got more and more adapted in like the last 5, maybe 10 years. So buying behaviors have changed dramatically. People inside companies are deciding to buy and purchase tools, and then it's being adopted by the team and eventually by the company. And before that, it was just bottom down, top down, decided by like one person. That is like a shift in buying behavior. And then it's actually quite a complex product to build, not necessarily because of the technical side also, but also because it requires different compliance layers in order to pay out users personally as a business. It's quite a non-trivial business transaction. And we had to overcome this, not just in one market, but in many, many markets, even with the first customer, because their user bases are usually spread across the world. And therefore, like the first barrier to entry for our product was pretty high from the beginning.
So you mentioned you talked to founders, operators, you got a sense of what was going on, and this was a pain that it wasn't just something that you were experiencing personally, but a lot of SaaS companies, B2B SaaS companies, were having these challenges. When somebody, at this stage, when somebody's trying to build a product or an MVP, we know the usual thing, right? There's this, maybe it's a lightweight, maybe it's a clickable prototype, maybe it's a user interface, I don't know, whatever. But get something visible in front of customers. But interestingly enough, a lot of your focus was on things like scalability and compliance and all of this stuff. Can you just explain why that was so important for you from the start?
Yeah. So as an infrastructure product, you have to pay attention on features and details. Many non-infrastructure products, don't have to pay attention to. As we become a functionality inside our customers' products, it needs to be super reliable, that nothing breaks if we're there, right? It needs to be scalable because in terms of users, like our scaling has been probably much faster than like other SaaS companies would see it out there, just because we're like piggybacking on our customers' users. In terms of compliance, like we had to tick a lot of checkboxes in order to make the whole process of attribution and rewarding compliant across multiple countries. And therefore, we had to do many things that require a lot of resources and attention at the beginning. And in order to ship quickly, in order to iterate quickly, we were basically sacrificing other things that if you would just ask your customers that these folks would see as must-haves, but in the end, they're not necessarily must-haves. So one example I can give is at the very beginning, right, with the first customers we launched, we didn't have a portal to log in. We didn't have a portal to log in where they would see their analytics, a portal to log in where they could, change the settings of their referral program. All this basically was either automated and provided via Notion, like via Notion pages we were just sharing with our customers, or we were asking them about like how the program should behave and what the program parameters should look like. And we were like behind the curtain, setting everything for them up and running scripts in order to make sure everything is according to their needs. But we heard like a few times at the beginning, this is not a product, even though we had like an end-to-end working product that does what the version 1 we thought should have. And then over time, obviously, we built everything that, in addition to that, was expected. But we came quite far, or we got quite far with that like absolute minimal viable product in the end, which helped us to iterate on the areas where we thought they were most important. And a referral program in the first place needs to be needs to acquire more customers and needs to acquire more revenue. That is like the single most important goal of a referral program, besides like, it shouldn't obviously break the product experience and so on. But all the other bells and whistles, even though they might be considered, if you ask your customers straight away if it's a must-have or not a must-have, they don't really matter at the beginning.
First of all, were you charging these early customers?
Yeah, so we believe in the alignment of incentives, and we also believe in there should not be any roadblocks in order to get something started, what we have. Therefore, we decided for a freemium success-based pricing. And success in our world means referral ARR. So everyone gets through the door for free. And as soon as the program is performing, we're basically charging for that. So even the first customers signed off on that deal, and then over time, basically, we were charging them as soon as the success kicked in.
Okay, and so you were using Notion for a dashboard, just sending them a link to something that they could look at. You were using kind of like this Wizard of Oz MVP through Slack, where they were kind of getting onboarded and set up, and you were running these Python scripts in the background. And then presumably they had to do some work on their end to embed the solution into their product. A lot of founders would be terrified to get that in front of customers because you're right, it doesn't look like a product. It just looks like a hodgepodge of different things. And how did you navigate that? How did you try to set expectations with customers? Because I think there's probably a really valuable lesson here that if more founders could take steps like this to focus on the solution rather than being overly worried about how beautiful and perfect and complete it looks, you can probably make faster progress. But there's always this thing that you're going to disappoint customers.
It's a great question. So we were heavily leaning on selling the value of the product and not necessarily the features. And the value of the product is something that sold or like partially sold one of their biggest issues, which is distribution and customer acquisition at reasonable LTV CAC or sustainable levels. We also, at the very beginning, sold via our own network or like direct or indirect network. So therefore, we had a certain level of trust with the first customers, I would say. And the overall appearance of, let's say, the website and also the sales pitch. I can talk a little bit later about that. I think was pretty solid and buttoned up. That as soon as they entered onboarding, I think they were overly convinced that it's going to be the right solution for them. And then, throughout the onboarding process at the very beginning, they found that like just some pieces are not there, but we could convince them that it's not really necessary to have this at this point, and we will obviously build this over time, which we obviously did by now. So everything I'm talking right now is like very early and scrappy days of Cello. And as soon as they got it live and they saw the performance, it didn't really matter anymore. It didn't matter if they had to visit a Notion page to see the signups and purchases flying in, or if it would be a perfectly crafted dashboard they could sign in.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the ultimate lesson here is that we have to remember that customers aren't buying the product; they're buying the outcome, and sometimes it's easy to kind of get confused and worry about the wrong thing. When we were talking earlier, and I about growth tactics and how you built the business, got it to 7 figures and beyond, you said to me, we sort of really think about this as a growth system, and explain to me like what you mean by that, and was that something that you were very intentional about early on, or is that something that has sort of evolved, over time?
First of all, we're building a product for growth managers in the first place. Like some companies don't have growth as a function, that it's marketing, but we're selling into an area where, first of all, we had to build up a lot of knowledge about the topic, more than for example, technical founders would have to do. So we understood our own go-to-market. We think about it probably more as growth managers as of like classic marketing managers, and therefore we believe that what we're building is like a compounding growth system with growth loops at the core, and then linear marketing activities that accelerate those loops. And if I talk about growth loops, what I mean by that is it's basically compounding input activities that lead to a certain output that again serve as input for the same, for example, acquisition channel. So at the core of our growth system is what we call, on what is called in literature, casual contact loop, which is like by far the most the most successful and strongest driver of inbound for us. It's called casual contact loop, and this is this little powered by branding that you will see on our widget, and that, for example, has been pioneered by, let's say, Intercom or Superhuman. So many companies out there get in touch with us by just casually checking out the referral program of let's say a Miro or like one of our customers. And it's not just important for us to create new touch points with customers, but also very important for the user of a Miro or of a Typeform in order to have a first casual contact with Cello, because in the end, if they're sharing and if they're successful in that referral journey, they will be paid out via our platform. So they know that if something is being paid out via Cello, they know where this is coming from, right? So therefore, we have like a quite a nice symbiosis of creating value for the users, but also having a very impactful acquisition channel for us. And all the other growth loops we're building basically around this core growth loop. And also all the marketing activities we have lead as accelerator for the growth loops we have in that system. So, some companies out there that, heavily lean on marketing campaigns, let's say, where you have like a one-off peak and then after the campaign is over, it dies out. we strongly believe in building like always compounding systems where we just add more and more to that system in order to make it spin faster. And I think that's like a more reliable and sustainable way to acquire customers, which makes it also pretty repeatable in a way. And it's not just that we're like building this for us, but the vision of Cello, it goes far beyond referrals in the end. So the vision of Cello is to create a growth operating system where we productize different growth loops in order to provide it to our customers. Whereas user and partner referrals are just the first two growth loops we've built, right? And there are many more growth loops that are coming in over the next few months and years.
So just explain to me a little bit about this powered by kind of the casual contact that you talked about. So people see this somewhere in the product that they're using. It leads them to discover Cello or whatever. So just explain to me, one, how that's turning into a potential referral. And then secondly, maybe give me an example of how you are, like an example of the compounding piece. Like how are you kind of maybe driving people there?
To start with explaining what casual contact loop is, maybe I start with a more renowned example. Let's say Intercom. You know these little chat windows. If you click on that, bubble on the bottom right corner, it opens up Intercom, and then at the bottom of that widget, it says "We run on Intercom" or something like that. If you click on that little button, it leads you to the Intercom site. So as a user, interacting with this chat window, you will find this little branding, and if you click on the branding, you land on the Intercom page. And therefore, you understand, like, this is the infrastructure provider for that chat tool. And we basically adapted that and did the same for our referral widget. So if you click on usually our customers use like a gift icon somewhere placed inside the product. If you click on that, our referral widget will open, and it also says at the bottom, share and earn with Cello. If users click on that, they will also land on our website. By now, on a monthly basis, we have close to 1 million users like opening our widget, and therefore like many eyeballs, which leads to quite a decent amount of inbound, because we're offering something that hasn't been out there, hopefully solving a problem they see. And this is just like at the very core of our engine. And around this, we're building additional growth loops and linear activities in order to drive that. What I mean by that is, so if you think of that loop, let's say user clicks on gift icon, user opens our widget, clicks on that Cello branding, lands on our page, signs up as a customer, or like launches Cello inside their product. More users are being exposed to that widget because all their users can see the referral program inside their company. And then the loop starts again, right? More users can see it. Their users might be also interested in something like Cello. They become customers, and then the loop continues to compound. And our inbound from referral from casual contact loop is basically pretty linear to the amount of users we're adding to our platform, which is an exponential curve. So it's a pretty nice flywheel in itself. And then in order to accelerate this, for example, we obviously also dog food Cello. So we also use Cello for referrals. If we close more customers via referrals, we add more users to our product, and therefore more eyeballs on casual contact loop, right? And it also helps compounding the casual contact loop, for example.
I mean, it sounds too simple, right? It's just like obviously it's very thought through, but ultimately it boils down to the more people who can see this powered by, logo or whatever in the widget is ultimately going to lead to more people discovering Cello, signing up for the product, which is going to lead to more of their users seeing Cello, and ultimately some of them becoming customers. And if we just keep doing a good job at getting the right people to see this through everything we're doing, this exponential growth that comes from that.
Not every product has a possibility to offer something like this. Like some products are just more closed. Think of an accounting tool. Like it's going to be difficult to implement something like this. But the products that have the possibility to have casual contact loop, or there are more loops out there where we will also be shipping products for. For example, user generated content. It's beautiful because it compounds, it grows exponentially, and usually to like very little or even no costs, because it's like an organic growth loop. But yeah, it's in the end everything is more complex than it seems. With our model, we also need to make sure our customers are not just somewhat happy with our product, but are actually financially successful because the way we price. And therefore, our goal is basically to ship a product that works across different industries, that makes our customers financially successful in order for us to monetize.
Let's talk about how specific growth channels that have helped you to go from the first 10, 20 customers to getting to the first million in ARR. And I know you invested some effort in content collaborations as a way to do that. Many founders would default to content being, I'm going to write blog posts, I'm going to spend time building an audience on LinkedIn, which is not a bad thing to do, but it's also a very slow and painful thing to build your own audience. You did that a little bit differently. You found people who already had audiences, and you started to build some relationships there. So let's talk a little bit about that.
It's exactly what you said. Like, you can create content and you can hope that it indexes at some point in order to bring you to like drop feed you leads. We decided very early on for like a different content strategy where we were not so reliant on the Google algo, which I think looking back was quite a good idea, with like Google crushing everyone's traffic with their AI summaries. So what we decided on is to work together with the best content creators in our field in order to create awareness for the problem, but also for the solution in combination with our brand linked to it. And in order to do this successfully, we are of the opinion that you gotta start, or you gotta aim very high in order to make it successful. So if we, for example, would have started with a mediocre type content creators, or just content creators that are not so renowned and maybe newer in the field, it would have been more difficult to, from that level, get to like a higher level. It's always easier to like start very, very high, and as soon as you work together with the best out there, everyone else is like, or is going to be more interested to work together with you. And therefore we aimed as high as possible. I got in contact with Kyle Poyar, who is like, for people that are not so much into growth and SaaS pricing, for example, he's like the OG of growth in our industry. And as I was anyway in touch with the VC fund he used to work with, I just asked for an intro. He used to be operating partner at that VC firm, and working together with like founders on a daily basis. And I just asked him like if he would be interested. Luckily, he heard that, he had questions from founders around referrals, experimenting with new acquisition channels before, and he just couldn't give good answers. So at the time, I was just pretty lucky, I guess. He was interested in writing together a piece where we would deliver proprietary data points and like just insights no one else would have. And he on the other side would provide his feedback and expertise, but also obviously his audience, because it was published on his Substack. It got sent into tens of thousands of inboxes, which for us was like a kickstart, which you usually don't get from like writing content. And that strategy we kept doing with other amazing folks in the content space out there, which led to like long form content that also ranks on Google, but also short form or short term spikes in terms of inbound because it's being distributed via Substack and via email. And we then were like recycling that content, of course, also on social media, which works quite well with our automated outbound motion. And what we did there is we, go after certain industries that we, for example, have already customers and customer success stories with. We connect via people that are relevant to us with my profile on LinkedIn. And if they're interested straight away, right, great, we jump on a call. If they're not interested, it's also fine. But then we're like creating relevant short form content around growth and like closer topics to our product, not directly, but like valuable content. And through that short form content, we're also like nurturing those leads over time by just being helpful and creating valuable content. And that like combination of long form and recycled short form content in combination with our automated outbound motion is like pretty powerful. And yeah, since the early days, we're like hammering on that and like iterating and optimizing it.
Kyle has been a guest on the show, and I think he's done a great job building a pretty big audience in the last few years even. He didn't charge you for the content that he created. There was some value exchange that you wanted to get people in your space educated about this problem and a solution that you were offering. And you had this proprietary data that helped Kyle come up with some good answers and insights to questions that he was already getting asked by founders. So I think there was a good fit there. Was that the same kind of value exchange you worked with other creators? Did you have to pay for content? In principle, it's a great model, right? Go and find people who are the audiences and do this. But a lot of those people are getting overwhelmed by all kinds of pitches all the time. And often if you're kind of going for the relationship angle, that takes time to build. How did you, what were the things that worked well for you to be able to make a breakthrough with some of these creators?
Yeah, so starting with Kyle, as said, like might be a lucky coincidence. Basically, we're breaking up the market for us in terms of collaborations with other relevant content creators, because it seems like everyone is admiring him and everyone feels better if their content piece is next to his. So that made it way easier to get into the second and third, like unpaid, completely organic content collaboration that worked basically across along the same lines. So my advice is like aim as high as possible. Everything, like if you don't aim completely high at the beginning, it's going to be more difficult to climb up again. We also tested with paid collaborations, but the results were not the same, just because of I mean, it says sponsored, and it also has a different vibe, and I think people are somewhat or become somewhat blind to commercials or like advertorials, and so therefore like the organic content we're creating with content creators by just providing like a lot of value to the piece and like our unique insights in an area that is not red ocean, has been valuable enough that people were actually investing also in it in order to create something valuable for the community. So that is like, if you can find content, if you can convince amazing content creators out there to collaborate on this, everyone benefits, I guess.
And was the proprietary data the main sort of value exchange that you were leading with when you had these conversations?
Yeah, I would say so. Proprietary like data points and metrics, but also insights in like what works, what doesn't work, like what we have seen out there. To an extent where many companies were scrambling around maybe with their own approaches or ideas, and we were indexing that across like multiple companies in order to come up with like real insights, and also benchmarks, obviously. So I think that was very helpful because in the end, it's difficult to create like a valuable tactical piece if you can't back it up with data. And I think that is what we mostly brought to the table.
So you had the content collaborations. You talked about dog fooding your own product and using Cello and referrals and so on. But you're also doing sort of network sales, right? What was all that about?
I mean, network sales was very important for the beginning of Cello. Before we had like other growth loops and channels up. At the beginning, we were like heavily leaning into our network. We were even for our pre-seed rounds expanding the route in terms of like how many parties we let in. So we got 6 micro funds on board for our pre-seed and like quite a couple of angels that were functioning as design partners for early Cello. And then also obviously via those micro funds in their portfolios, but also via our angels, we were heavily leading on network sales at the beginning, which is, I think, the way to go at the very early days. Later on, as we got a bit bigger, we layered other ways to acquire customers on top of it. So network sales now has become maybe, I don't know, 5%, where at the very beginning it was 100%, and then it shrunk over time.
So just kind of explain to me a little bit, like break that down. Like what were you doing? How were you kind of figuring out who you were going to sell to? Just help us understand that next level of detail here.
Think about us as a pre-seed company, no product, but a vision and a slide deck. I was reaching out to basically people in my network, and in order to get them committed to implement Cello, I basically offered them a little ticket in our pre-seed round. Like they were, to some point excited and convinced about if it works, it's got to be pretty good. And therefore, like those commitments helped us also to close the round because we had like first design partners lined up, and those commitments also helped us to build the product in the early days. Because even though not everything was perfect, they had like shared incentives because they were also investors in the company, and those first customers helped us also to convince like the next customers and the next customers. So we basically leveraged our pre-seed funding round in order to get like really strong commitments from first customers in the end, and then like indirect networks. We had micro funds that have like tens and hundreds of SaaS companies. So obviously it's easier to sell to someone where you get an intro compared to like, blindly and like cold outreach. And that helped us at the very beginning a lot.
So you were very intentional about who you were like identifying as potential investors, who you were spending most of your time and effort trying to reach out to, because it was not just about the investment side, it was also about the fit and the additional potential value that comes from that type of relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I think especially for early stage companies, they should always leverage funding rounds in order to also think about sales and in order to build up pipeline. And the earlier it is, the more the bigger party round can be, that it's also meaningful for angels, because at a later point in time, let's say post Series A, the tickets will be so big that not many angels will benefit from participating in such a round. So it's really about the pre-seed and seed rounds where you can apply this tactic, and I think you should always have this in mind when raising in the earlier rounds.
Cool. Okay, we're gonna have to wrap up soon, but I want to ask you one question before we do that, and I think it in many ways reflects the way that you guys are building this business and the people around you. That many founders, the first or second hire, you expect it to be a developer. Your background as a CRO, maybe the first or second hire is a sales guy. I don't know, right? But your second employee was head of people. Like, why?
Yeah, I get this question asked a lot if people hear about that. And I think it goes against everything you will read in any book. So I would say most founders would agree that their team, their people are the most important asset, and if you can't make sure to hire and retain and enable a great team, you will basically not be successful. While saying that, people-related topics always fall short because there are more urgent topics on the founder's plate. If it's sales, if it's investor relation, if it's onboarding a customer, fixing a bug, whatever. And I made this experience before. So what we wanted to make sure that whatever comes, whatever the me and my co-founder will be busy with or think that is more important than people topics, we have someone that is super passionate and skilled about making sure to identify and hire and retain the best talent out there, and create like a great performance culture at Cello. Because even though I want to do it, I'm after doing it my second time, I'm like self-reflected enough that it won't work like this. So therefore, we decided very early on to hire Philip as head of people, with a special profile though. So Philip is an amazing generalist with like a T-shape and a strong skill set in the people area. But he's also in times where we, for example, don't hire people or don't have enough work on the people side, as for example, if you freeze hiring, for example, he's generalistic enough that he helps out in other areas, which I think is also like an important part of the story. But therefore, we can make sure that everything around people is just at the highest possible bar we can think of. And I think this is like, we believe this is really paying off. But on the other side, like he can also give hands on in other areas where he's supporting and even owning like whole other areas.
That makes a lot more sense. I mean, the idea of like, a team of 3 and you've got a head of people who, is there enough for that person to be doing at that point, unless you're hiring like hundreds of people? It's kind of, but that makes more sense. Okay, let's wrap up. Let's get 7 quick fire questions for you. Just try to answer them as quickly as you can. You ready?
Sure. Let's do it.
What's one of the best pieces of business advice you've received?
I think I go with an old school advice: do things that don't scale. That helped us a lot in the past.
Or actually, in your case, do the things that need to scale and also do things that don't scale, right?
Pick your battles. Yeah.
Yeah. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
For everything getting into go-to-market, and for me becoming CRO, I picked the acceleration formula from Mark Roberge. Big fan. And I think generally for managers, multipliers.
Right. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
I would pick perseverance, but I think it's being mentioned too often. So I would go with having a reality distortion field.
I love that. I think we need more of that. In many ways, I think as founders, you try to be such realists that you talk yourself out of some of these crazy things, right? What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Walking meetings. So if you don't need a screen, do it at least once a day, leave the house, and do that just while walking. It's like active recovery.
What's a new or crazy business idea you'd love to pursue if you had the time?
LLM SEO.
There's a lot of conversations going on about that right now.
Yeah, I think it's a hot topic.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Starting my first company, my entrepreneurship professor wanted to talk me out of continuing and like building the business, which is odd. It's like 12 years ago. Things have changed, but yeah, I thought, never mind. I just keep going.
And finally, what's one of your most important passions outside of your work?
I'm a big football fan. So yeah, VfB Stuttgart, if anyone has heard that football club before.
Awesome. Stefan, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. If people want to check out Cello, they can go to cello.so. And if folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn.
Great. We'll include a link to your profile in the show notes. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to chat and sharing some of the lessons and struggles that you've kind of experienced along the way of building this business. Hopefully we provided some other founders with some ideas, some insights, some inspiration to go and apply to their own business. And I wish you and the team the best of success.
Thanks, Omar. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Cheers.